unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live, Boxing Ego unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. Eddie Hearn says the blueprint to beat Wilder is out now, and fighters are going to follow it. And Deontay Wilder will have problems, you know, because of that. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, subscribe to the channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you want to become part of the gang, notification gang, please hit the bell icon. Shout out to the super chats, channel donations, the Venmo donations, the Cash App, and the Patreon family. We working. Sign up for ESPN Plus below using my link. It definitely helps the channel when you guys use that link. You can now bundle ESPN Plus with Hulu and Disney Plus. Get all three apps for $12.99. I have all three, and it definitely helps the channel. Now, let's talk about it. I want to recap some statements made by Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn did an interview and says Wilder, won't be ready for the third Fury fight. He says, quote, "It's more difficult because it's a different type of fight. I've always believed Anthony Joshua beats Deontay Wilder, but he never made the fight. But I also know it's a dangerous fight. It's still a dangerous fight for Fury in the third fight, but watching that back, my worry for Deontay Wilder is everyone will do the same thing. You can't make adjustments because I don't believe that Wilder has the skill to make the adjustments. Look at the adjustments Anthony Joshua made in the Andy Ruiz rematch. That took skill. Joshua made adjustments. I don't believe Wilder can make adjustments in the third Fury fight." He goes on to say, quote, "Can you imagine if Andy Ruiz boxed Deontay Wilder right now after seeing that? He would absolutely terrorize him because the mystique's gone. Don't go too close to Wilder. Wait for the right hand. Now it's, I'll just get out the way and beat you up." Whether that's true or not, whether he had an off night or Fury is amazing, that's now for Wilder to prove. Right? He also says maybe Joshua, or maybe they can get Wilder to step aside. He says, when you talk about undisputed, the window is very small, and the window might be next. What's going to happen is Bob Arum has got Tyson Fury and Kubrat Pulev right, so he can maneuver that situation. If Bob came to us tomorrow and said, "Great news, I got Pulev to wait. Do you want to do Fury? It's done for June or July." Then there's Wilder now. Wilder, I don't know if he's officially exercised the rematch clause. He said he's going to. Well, do it anyway, because he might be thinking, even if I get paid off the step aside money, I've got to exercise the rematch clause. But then once you're paying him off, it gets harder and harder to do. Right? So that's all I need to talk about with that. Listen, Wilder Fury was great for boxing because it created a lot of stories and, viewership, and people paid attention. Celebrities came out, fans looked like they got their money's worth. It was a great fight. And this is what happens when you have the best versus the best. I told you before the fight, during the fight, after the fight, whenever you want to label what I've said, that the winner of this fight is the absolute #1 in the division. Tyson Fury, he got over on Wilder. He beat him. He beat him soundly. There was no controversy or anything, to me. I know Wilder said his suit, but that doesn't change the outcome. So Tyson Fury won fair and square. So congrats to him. And the new Wilder has to come correct if he is exercising the rematch clause. Now, I will say the only downside to Wilder Fury and Wilder losing and it playing out how it did is it is open up the floodgates to a lot of casual talk and boxing conversations with people that really don't know boxing and saying foolish stuff, including Eddie Hearn in this scenario. Eddie Hearn is now likening any old fighter to do and duplicate what Tyson Fury did, which sounds utterly ridiculous if you know boxing, and like Eddie Hearn's basically surmising that the aura's gone, like basically the stuff people said about Anthony Joshua. To me, Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz was more detrimental because the perception was that Andy Ruiz made Joshua quit. There's no one that's being fair and reasonable that believes that Wilder quit, because Wilder, you know, it's coming down to the point where he might have, or he might be firing his longtime trainer, co-trainer, Mark Breland, for even throwing in the towel. So if anybody is out there saying that Wilder quit, you know, he had no legs in there for whatever reason, you know, it was probably a combination of things, to be honest. You know, Fury's weight, Fury's shots, well-played shots, you know, and just wrestling and being with the big person, getting hurt, nerves. You know, he's claiming the suit helped to leave him with dead legs. You know, and he couldn't get off. It was just a bad night in the office. That's what it was, you know. But regardless, you got to look at the fight and you got to be realistic. You can now not just put anybody in the position of Tyson Fury and say, oh yeah, the blueprint's out. So like I said, if anyone's being reasonable, I don't really know anyone that said Wilder quit, because if Wilder quit, Joshua had more of an uphill battle, because not only did he got, you know, it was similar in the fact of it looked like both of the fighters lost their legs and never really recovered, you know, and took more punishment. But the difference is Joshua got knocked down 4 times, whereas Wilder got knocked down 2 times. And the perception is Joshua quit, and the perception is Wilder at least went out like a warrior up until his corner, you know, made a decision that he protests. He said, nah. And, you know, and he's protesting it so much to the point where he's possibly getting rid of people on his team for making that decision and or being influenced by people in the crowd to make that decision. Versus Joshua, he's like, oh, I'm staying with Rob McCracken, you know. And, you know, there was no dispute on the stoppage, really. You know, Joshua tried to act like a protest, but he, you know, he looked done. So my point being is this: Eddie Hearn's kind of, it's like he's trying to compare this to the Joshua situation, and he's saying, hey, Joshua's skill set. Joshua was in a worse spot, you know. And what Eddie Hearn is saying is really, from a boxing perspective, is really nonsensical, because we cannot take away from the physicality of the fight and what Tyson Fury did great and how he prepared and how he showed up, and just lump anyone else in, you know, put anyone else in that B-size slot and say, oh, you know what, can you imagine what Dillian White would do? Can you imagine what Andy Ruiz would do, etc.? Because these are totally different fights. You know, Eddie Hearn is trying to pander to casual fans, you know, and that's by doing these triangle theories. Now, there are times where a fighter is kind of vulnerable and kind of exposed in such a way where the blueprint is kind of out there to beat Wilder, or excuse me, to beat that fighter, right? But the blueprint to beat Wilder, I'm not convinced that that was a blueprint, meaning that is the foundation and the principle of success for other guys, other said guys, you know, guys X, Y, and Z, brand X guys, to beat Wilder. Because what Tyson Fury did, Tyson Fury can do. You know, and I know that sounds crazy. Like, what do you mean? And you go, what Tyson Fury did, he can do. Meaning, he has skills. He is a mammoth man. He is 6'9". He has a long reach. He showed a different style that we weren't really all the way, you know, accustomed to, which probably caught Wilder off guard. Him being more aggressive and doing exactly what he said in the pre-build. For that, props to Tyson Fury. You get me? But he's also exhibited the ability to box, to go off the back foot. You know, in fights like this with Wilder or Steve Cunningham, Otto Violin, Fury showed he had heart, and, you know, that he would mix it up on the inside despite being that big. So Fury's giving you different dynamics and mechanics in his ability. Plus, he has a large frame. So how could we compare this? This is, again, the only downside with the loss is it brings in stupidity and people who don't know what the F they're talking about in boxing, and they're making comparisons. Like Eddie Hearn says, oh, can you imagine Andy Ruiz? Okay, yeah, I can imagine Andy Ruiz. Could be a good fight. Andy Ruiz would have to work on the inside. Andy Ruiz is a guy who laces punches together, things of that sort. But the thing is, Andy Ruiz, put him next to Tyson Fury, and Andy Ruiz is going to look like a child and his dad, you know, side by side. I'm taller than Andy Ruiz myself, and I've stood next to Andy Ruiz, like I've seen him in person, you know, covering fights, and I've stood next to Tyson Fury. No comparison. So off of that one physical attribute, we're talking about two completely different fights, you know. And the funny thing with old media, with these talking points that are clearly not thought out, is there are a lot of like old media favorite fighters or whatever you want to call that old media accepts and likes, and they are punchers, you know, guys like Gennady Golovkin, right? Guys like, let's say, Lucas Matisse, maybe Maidana, and Pacquiao, you know, just different people like that. And the funny thing is albeit all those guys fight different from Wilder, you know, everyone has their own inherent style. Pacquiao got knocked out multiple times in his career, and he got knocked out again brutally last time by Juan Manuel Marquez. But you can't just assume, and old media doesn't even try to assume, that everybody is going to have that type of success with Pacquiao, because the blueprint is out there in Marquez. And you could say, okay, Pacquiao is super dynamic, right? So maybe that's an extreme example, because Pacquiao has a really awkward style, you know, so you can't, let's say you can't compare that, but you could go through the list, you know. Let's say Tim Bradley and Ruslan Provodnikov. Tim Bradley showed that Ruslan Provodnikov can be outboxed. Chris Algieri showed it also. But guess what? They also went through hell in order to achieve a victory and were badly hurt. So again, styles make fights. Styles make fights. So if you don't have Tim Bradley's grit and the ability to fight concussed, and you don't have his chin, then this is a totally different fight for you. So just because Tim Bradley did it and somehow survived getting badly hurt in Chris Algieri, that don't mean Amir Khan can do it, because Amir Khan has showed a propensity to get hurt and not be able to recover and or get knocked out. So once again, these little triangle theories don't work. This was Fury's victory based on Fury's style, based on Fury's ability, based on Fury's size, based on Fury's skill set. And that's it. You can't give this to Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte said he'll rough him up and body shot. But guess what? Wilder was undefeated for 40, 41 fights. And if it was so easy, then how come those other dudes didn't beat him? Like Luis Ortiz twice, or Bermain Stavern, you know? And then now Eddie Hearn's guesstimating that everyone's going to have an easy time. Listen, if that's the case, make Wilder versus Joshua, and then the winner gets Fury, because I still would favor Wilder versus Joshua. The only thing Wilder can't, in this whole ordeal, losing and, you know, losing in that fashion, he can't lose his mind, you know, and start feeling sorry for himself and not come back hungry, willing to learn. But, you know, it sounds like a crock of it when Eddie Hearn is basically giving other people credit and saying, you know, what Joshua would do. If you were so confident, why you never made the Joshua Wilder fight? At the end of the day, it's not, to me, there's no blueprint to beat Wilder, because if you don't got Tyson Fury got knocked out smooth. He got dropped and knocked out smooth by Wilder and somehow got up. Other guys get hit by Wilder and can't get up. So just for that reason alone, it's a different fight. Like I said, Fury is almost 7 feet tall, can box and brawl. So him being able to bully the bully, plus whether people say it's an excuse or not, Wilder looked out of sorts. Like, it didn't look like it was his night, and it looked like he had no, you know, legs for whatever reason, right? And that's not going to be the case in every single one of his fights, because when you take a nasty spill or a loss like this, I mean, I would imagine you would try to get better and figure out where you went wrong. So yeah, Eddie Hearn sounds crazy by even trying to link other people to some type of blueprint. Because Floyd beat Maidana, that doesn't mean you're going to beat Maidana, because you're not Floyd, you know? So this was not like, you know, I think this Wilder, people are blowing this loss out of proportion. You know, it's showing people's true character and fans and stuff. They're happy he lost, and it's like they're losing their mind to the point where people are saying a bunch of stuff that, if you're really a boxing fan, it sounds crazy. It really and truly does. Credit to Tyson Fury, but Tyson Fury is the only one that's proven that. To me, Wilder wasn't exposed. He fought the #1 person in the heavyweight division, and he lost. Klitschko lost. You know, Klitschko lost and still fought Anthony Joshua, and still did good. And you know, subtle differences. Like if he would have made subtle changes, he would have looked like he was on his way to beat Joshua. You know, things like that. But you know, for Eddie Hearn to suggest that Wilder exposed and blueprint, I'm not sure, because again, you're talking about just bringing the fight. Fury took Wilder didn't even really get many punches off on Fury this time, you know, for whatever reason. But Wilder caught Fury, I think, with the right hand. That's if you couldn't roll with the, because Fury kind of rolled with it a little bit, because he's so rangy, he's able to get out of the way of it a little bit and like flow with the motion of the punch. You know what I'm saying? Canelo kind of did it with Jacob. There's this one shot that Jacobs landed, and it looked like Canelo got his head like snapped crazy, but the smart thing Canelo did is he rolled with the motion of the punch. So he still, you know, it still hurts, but rolling with it takes some steam off, so you don't have your head at a, you know, like a statue, and then, you know, your head's going in the opposite direction. So I got to watch it again, but from my perspective, Fury was like, you know, backing out or whatever, trying to get out of range, and he still got caught with the Wilder shot, but he kind of rolled with it a little bit. So if you don't have Fury's ability to roll with the punch and you just take that punch head on, then it might have been a different night for you and a different fight. So Eddie Hearn sounds foolish. You know, you got to look at who Wilder lost to. He lost to the #1 heavyweight who's beaten everybody. You know, he's beaten everyone he's fought, and he's big. And he's bigger than everybody he's fighting, you know. So I'm not sold on this whole, you know, blueprint out to get him and stuff like that. To me, you look at like Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez, who Eddie Hearn has on his card. Chocolatito was more exposed, you know, in terms of he could be susceptible, because there's other people in the division that have similar attributes and maybe styles. Like he's about to fight Cal Yaffe, and Cal Yaffe is physically bigger than him, you know, and he has some power. So Sor Rungvisai was inexperienced. He could be outboxed. Juan Francisco El Strayo Elgado, he showed you that Sor Rungvisai can be boxed, but Roman Chocolatito couldn't. So to me, even a guy like Chocolatito, it was exposed that he has more problems with voluminous punchers and guys, you know, who has some power, like Carlos Cuadras, McWilliams Arroyo, Sor Rungvisai, and guys with some power and volume. So I see more of a blueprint to beat Roman Gonzalez and him not be the same than Wilder. If you fight Wilder and you trying to do some shit Fury did, you still could get laid out, because you ain't Fury. You don't have Fury's height. How you gonna give? That's like saying because you can dunk over Spud Webb that you can dunk over Perkins, or you can dunk over LeBron James. You could dunk over Zion. Like these are we talking about two different things. Only in boxing do you have so many people who constantly interject their opinion, and it's just like, what do you know? What do you truly know? Like, you have to factor in a lot of different things. Dunking over, you know, whoever, Allen Iverson versus dunking over somebody who's 7 foot. That's a totally different thing. You're dunking over a 7-footer, you know, versus a guy like Vince Carter's height or Muggsy Bogues, or, you know, we're talking about way different things. You get what I'm saying? And you can't just give people other people's attributes. That's just not how it works. Like, let's say the 49ers. You're like, oh, but they were exploited by the quarterback running. Yeah, KC Chiefs has Patrick Mahomes, right? So he was able to get past the ball. He could throw a deep ball, pause. He can scramble. He can come out of the pocket and run and scramble. So that makes him the threat. That's what makes him a special quarterback. But you can't just give that to Eli Manning. That's not his game. You can't just give that to Phillip Rivers, a different quarterback with different height, different size, different speed. You know, that's what makes this stuff unique. It's like almost like a video game. You know, you look at what Eli Manning, they show you that profile screen. They'll show you Eli Manning's height. They'll show his speed, his IQ, you know, his mobility, and they'll show you the different characteristics and the different rating. So if you don't have Tyson Fury, if this was like fight night and you don't have Tyson Fury's ring IQ, you don't have Tyson Fury's height, his reach, you know, his ability to switch and make adjustments, experience 12 rounds with Wilder that he already had, right? His ability to learn, his chin. I mean, you have a different Madden rating. So Eddie Hearn's comment sounds foolish. I didn't see an exposure and all this stuff. Someone got exposed. All I seen is Wilder lose to the #1 person. No more, no less. We unpacked.
So if you enjoyed this video and want more content like this on the channel, you can show your appreciation by going to the PayPal donate button or the YouTube support button, and you can donate any amount that you feel is equivalent to the value of this video. Much more to come. Thank you guys for your support. Boxing Ego, the future of boxing.